Good evening. I am Adrienne Bell, the Executive Director at Brand New Congress. This evening, I am so excited to present to you one of our powerhouses that's on the BNC 2022 slate. Her name is Brittany Ramos Debarros, and Brittany is running to represent New York 11. Good evening, Brittany. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Adrienne. It's a pleasure as always.
Well, I am so excited for you to present and introduce yourself to those who are listening, those who are going to vote for you in New York, so that you can let them know why you are the best one to represent New York 11. You are we have two veterans on our slate, and you're one of the two. And so we really want to honor you today in the front of Veterans Day tomorrow, because really appreciate your service and the things that you've been doing, continue to working for veterans, even once you came home. So let's just start. Tell us about yourself. Tell us why you are running for Congress and where you at and where New York 11 is located.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here and be a part of the incredible Brand New Congress slate with some really powerhouse slate mates as well. So, for me, my story, I grew up in a conservative military family. And my parents really instilled in me a love for the values that America is supposed to be about, these ideas of opportunity and justice and service. But I'm also biracial. And so at a young age, I could look around and see with my own eyes that the America that my white family was living in was just not the same as the America that my Black and Puerto Rican family were experiencing and had experienced. And my parents instilled this work ethic and this idea that if you work hard enough, anyone can make it. And yet I also saw my parents work incredibly hard, families all around us work multiple jobs, and still struggle to keep the roof over our head, having church friends bringing us groceries to help us get by. And I had to ask, right? I knew something didn't add up at a young
Right.
age. So I ended up going to school on an Army scholarship. When I graduated in 2011, I was a platoon leader responsible for 40 lives at 22 years old and had deployment orders to Afghanistan. And when I was going, my politics and worldview had started to transform and open up like it does for a lot of folks in college. But I was still a true believer in the war. I really thought that I was going to go help protect Afghan people from the bad guys and kind of fight for democracy and these just causes. And so it was devastating and transformational to be there and realize that, we were so obviously adding to the violence, doing so much more
Mhm.
harm than good, in my opinion. And particularly to see the way that corporations were really running the show. Um, and so I came home really disillusioned, really confused, and hungry to make sense of what I had been a part of. And I think I had this unfulfilled hunger to serve. So I got involved in economic and racial justice work. But it wasn't until years later, I was still in the Army Reserves. Um, and it wasn't until years later when Colin Kaepernick took a knee, and I saw the flag and
Mhm.
veterans, myself, right, be
Mhm.
weaponized against a man who was standing up for the very freedoms and values that I believed I was signing up to fight for in the first place, right? And really it hit me like lightning that I had power in my voice as a veteran to share the truth of my experience, to share the ways that I felt that, my service or my willingness to sacrifice was being misused and abused by leaders who later I learned through the Afghanistan papers being published, had been evidence that they had been lying to us about the progress of the war, about the mission. And so, not to get too far into the weeds about that, but since we are right before Veterans Day, I always, there are so many ways to serve our country and to serve our communities. And at the end of the day, it has to come back to really taking care of people, right?
Right.
And these questions of how do we stay safe? How do we care for each other? And so when folks I got involved in veteran organizing. I've been doing anti-war advocacy for several years. I started speaking out while I was still in uniform, was threatened with court martial, put under investigation just for sharing basic facts like the DoD burns 10.3 million gallons of oil per day on average, things like that, right? That are publicly available facts. Um, and also that assault on the truth, right?
Right.
Really, I think validated the fact that we need to speak up, that we have a voice, and that actually, if there's anything that's patriotic, it should be to be fighting to make sure that our leaders are upholding the values that we say that this country is about. And folks who know me from that organizing, in the district, in our community, came to me and asked me to run. I laughed at them when they first, I was like, I curse like a sailor. I'm not a politician type. But we're building an exciting campaign to flip the district. And I think people are hungry for something that feels real and not, and,
Right.
and honest.
Right. I find it interesting, and I want to go back to one of the statements that you just made is that you saw that corporations were running the war. We talk about we've been a part of so many senseless wars and wars where we have spent trillions of dollars when we have so many people living in poverty in America, and our public education system needs a boost, and taking care of our seniors. There's so much that we could be doing as a country. And when you go, or when you went to Afghanistan and you saw that the corporations were running the war, tell us something that you saw that made you come to that conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one example is when I first deployed, I was a maintenance platoon leader, part of an engineer battalion, right? And engineers
Mhm.
in the military do route clearance. So they have special vehicles and equipment that, and they got the mine resistant vehicles earlier than some of the other, right? Because they're like looking for bombs in the road
Okay.
essentially to safely blow them up or dispose of them. And so, our responsibility was to make sure that that those vehicles were maintained and they could continue the mission, right? I remember so viscerally sitting for at least a week, just sitting in the water, non-mission, rendered not mission capable to do that mission because despite the fact that we had a whole platoon of mechanics on hand that could fix those vehicles, knew what the problems were. We had the equipment, right, to fix
Mhm.
them. We had what we needed. there was a contractual obligation that the only mechanics that were allowed to work on those vehicles were corporate mechanics.
Mm.
And so, to me,
Mhm.
that was such a visceral moment of just pulling your hair out. Like, even if we believe that this war is supposedly to make us safe, this corporatism and corruption that is involved in the way that these contracts are allowed to be set up is actually working against our ability to operate effectively
Right.
as we can be, and against our kind of national security, as people say. And so, that was a real wake up call for me. And then just seeing that there were just contracts who had just been hanging out there for years, making hundreds of $1,000s a year,
Wow.
as corporate contractors there, and realizing that, we had lower enlisted troops who literally, in order to feed their families, are on SNAP benefits, right?
Mhm.
There's actually 20,000 plus active duty military families that are on food stamps in order to make ends meet. And then you have these, war profiteers who are just getting wealthier and wealthier off of our backs.
Right.
For what? Right? And
Right.
they keep by then turning around and pouring millions of dollars back into the pockets of Congress and politicians and lobbying to make sure that those contracts keep getting signed.
Wow. It's really great to hear you. You've got the shared life experiences, what we need for those that are serving and supposed to be serving in DC today. And so I've talked to veterans. We have a large veteran population in the area near where I live. And so one of the big concerns and will just bring sadness is to have veterans who cannot get health care, or they would have to be bussed in because wouldn't be a facility near them in order to get health care. And I remember this veteran telling me, he said, well, he wasn't telling me, I'm sorry, I was in a meeting that they were in. And he said that we fought for you, and all we want is for you to fight for us. And
Mm.
that just stuck with me, that here we have veterans who put their lives on the line. They're home, they're older now, and they can't even get decent healthcare treatment. And so we really need representatives that understand the needs of veterans. And so I love you were saying that you started your Vets for Brit uh, uh, group. And so tell us what that's about, and who you want to, have sign up, and what are the things that you hope to achieve with that group.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one is just that through the organizing I've done for the last several years with organizations like About Face, Veterans Against the War, and Vets for the People, led by
Mhm.
my fellow Latina veteran organizer, Pam Campos, who's
Mhm.
brilliant, and Triste, who's the national director for that, is that we're so often spoken for as
Right.
veterans,
Oh, yes.
right? Is that
Yes.
both political parties, and you'll see so much of it tomorrow, right? Love to hold us up and pat us on the back in their dog and
Mhm.
pony shows and their parades. And then those
Mhm.
same politicians will turn around and literally cut our benefits, right? We'll get all of
Right.
these free meals and these thank yous tomorrow, and then people will be hungry again the next day, right? And
Yeah.
it just doesn't need to be like that, right? And so
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is really important is that after many of us have experienced real moral injury in the military, realize, with the experiences that we have with wars that we realize we wish we, hadn't participated in, or the feeling that we were lied to about. And then we go on, right? And we're kind of continued to be used as these cardboard cutouts. But we have powerful skills and voices to bring to the movement, to bring to leadership. And, we deserve to speak for ourselves. And so
Right.
Veterans for Brittany is one of the first constituency groups that we're launching as part of our campaign. It's close to my heart, because I want folks to have the opportunity to connect with each other,
Mhm.
within the kind of context of the movement that we're building here locally, and connected to what is really a national progressive veteran movement, right? Where we get to speak for ourselves and talk about the truth of our experiences, without some of the plastic patriotism and knee jerk reactions that a lot of folks are conditioned to have on our behalf, right?
Right.
But aren't actually reflective of how we feel.
Right.
And the last thing I'll say, so I think that the link is there if you are a veteran, if you're a military veteran, or you're active duty military, and you want to connect to other vets who are hungry to help elect leaders who are going to put people and the planet over profit. Sign up at that link. and get connected to, other folks in community. But I want to make the point that, you're talking about healthcare. People in my district face that as well. We have, Staten Island, in order to get to Brooklyn, faces one of the highest tolls costs in the city, of a city that already has high bridge toll costs, right? We have to cross a bridge, and
Okay.
we get some of the lowest BAH in New York City, basic housing allowance, for anyone who
Okay.
doesn't know that. And so you have these older veterans, especially, who have to go to the VA for, 2 to 3 times a week, and they're paying a $15 toll every time
Mm,
they go back and forth. And that adds up so quickly when you're already on a fixed income and you're dealing with, additional medical issues and bills. And so, that's one example. But I think the thing I want people to know is this is an argument for passing Medicare for all, which is
right.
popular, right? It's popular
Right.
even in rural districts like mine, because it raises the floor. Medicare is not a perfect system either, right? Just
Right.
like the VA isn't, particularly because it's been so underfunded for so long. Um, but if we raise the floor of care that everybody has access to, then it frees up the VA to really focus on the specific issues that veterans need particular types of care for, and really specialize around
Hmm.
those. And it ups the standard of care for everybody as well as veterans. And so, I think that it's not talked about that way enough, that those things aren't oppositional to each other. They are a case for fully funding our public healthcare system so that we can do a better job of also serving our veteran and military communities.
Right. I love how you say that. Let us speak for ourselves. We always have people speaking for us, especially being, black black woman. Always want to speak for me. Let me speak for myself because I'm able to do so. And then we need representatives who look like us, who
Mhm.
speak like us, and who are not bought.
That's right.
That's the big thing. We have so many politicians that are just sold out, that are just bought, and they don't speak to the issues. It is really sad that we have veterans who are on food stamps, and tomorrow they're going to get free meals because you're a veteran, and then you're still going to be hungry. Uh, that should not be. It should not be. We shouldn't even be having that kind of conversation. And it's like, wow, the things that we need to be able to speak truth to power of what's really going on, how people are really being affected, and how COVID has really changed a lot of our world. And it's just the truth. And, just continue speaking to that because that's what the people need to hear. They need to know the truth. And if we don't tell the truth, we always say that voting doesn't cost anything. And I always say voting does because you got to be invested in knowing who you're voting for. What do they stand for? Do we share the same kind of values? And it takes time for that to happen. So as candidates campaign, that's how they're going to legislate. And
Mhm.
I admire that you're a community organizer. So what are some of the different things in being a community organizer and running for Congress? Do you find any similarities? Do you find anything that being an organizer that is really helping you as you get out and talk to people in your campaign for Congress?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just being in the practice of meeting people where they are, right? And
Hmm.
being in the practice of making an intentional and conscious effort to make sure that we're speaking to people who are the unorganized, right? I think in
Hmm.
movement, one of the things I was always battling with is to not fall into bad habits where we just preach to the choir constantly, right? And we're in
Right.
our little bubbles and we use our language and we feel so proud of our fancy vocabulary words and movement, but it's like people in the normal world who are working 3 jobs just trying to get by, right? Or all of these, they have no, and it's not that they're not smart enough. It's that who has the time to
In the
keep up
time.
with the latest movement Twitter language, And
Right.
so I think that just remembering to just come down to earth, right? And meet people really on that kitchen table level of like, what are you dealing with every day? I know what it feels like to struggle, and really speak to folks from the place of getting excited to build something together. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that's been a weird transition is that I feel really uncomfortable with the kind of like the ways that we have kind of conditioning to put candidates on a pedestal.
Yes.
I'm not some kind of like superhero human. I'm just like a regular person who sticks my foot in my mouth sometimes and like does, it's just like
Yeah.
my husband is like, can you please pick up your clothes off the floor? Like I'm a normal person, and I think we need more normal people leading who know what we go through on a daily basis. And I think that that's a positive, right? And
I
I
think
think
so.
what I hope is that, in saying that people become inspired that we can all be part of something powerful together, right? That you don't
Right.
have to be some kind of like, oh, this person is up on a pedestal and I'm not like that. We all are so powerful when we come together. And yet, in a district like mine, we've been made to believe that we're not. We've
Yes.
been made to believe that we're the minority when we're the majority. And that's the case in so many workplaces where workers are organizing all the way to electoral campaigns. And I think that that mindset of not just trying to work within the confines of how campaigns have been run, but running a campaign that can win through the process of transforming the political landscape.
Hmm.
People think about those things as separate projects, right? Oh, one is a short-term project and one is a long-term project. No, I don't think that that's true. I think we can build campaigns that galvanize, especially in a place like this where we've felt so ignored, where we felt so disempowered for so long. Our campaigns, when we come together like this, can really be transformational. And that's what I hope people experience in this campaign. And I think that that's an approach that coming from an organizing background and a rootedness and long-term goals for the movement.
I agree. I think you're being excuse me, an organizer helps you to be real. Well, tell us where New York 11 and where they can go to learn more about you.
Yes, our website is brittanyforcongress.org, all spelled out normally. And you can follow us on social media at Britt number 4 Congress across all social media, including TikTok lately. So check us out there. And I'm a pretty open book. Feel free to, if anyone has questions, never hesitate to reach out.
Excuse me.
This is something that we really are building together, and then I'm just honored to be a part of. So
Well, I am, oh, excuse me, I don't know why I'm getting choked. I guess just because we're normal people and normal things happen. Where is New York 11?
it is Staten Island and South Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this district is a battleground district that is going to be critical for us to flip. We have, for anyone who's not familiar, we currently have a Trump Republican
Mm.
representing us, who voted against certifying the election results, has continued to double down on her kind of January 6th instigation, voted against everything that could be good for our community almost. And we're running a really exciting campaign to flip, because a lot of folks don't realize that Democrats outnumber Republicans here almost 2-1. But
Wow.
our turnout is super low, and I think that that's partially because we keep having candidates that people can't see themselves in, that are
Right.
so focused on trying to speak to conservatives that we've alienated our actual majority base.
Mm.
That's
So when is the primary?
the primary, like all of these, upcoming midterm elections for our slate will be June for all of us, and
Okay.
then for anyone who has one, and then November for the general.
Okay. Okay. So we need volunteers. Campaigns always need volunteers. You're going to win in the field, knocking on doors, making some phone calls, donating some money because we are unbought, but it does still take money to run a great campaign. You've been running a really great campaign, Brittany. I know you on national TV not too long ago. So we really applaud the enthusiasm that you're bringing it. You're bringing your game to it and making people feel connected. And that's what it's about. We need you in Congress because when you get to Congress, you're going to be representing the South as well. And
That's
I
right.
tell you, we need some representation here for sure. And so we are so excited that you are a member of our slate and that you will represent veterans. I feel your passion for veterans and also for people who know what it feels like to hurt, feels like it to, feels like to struggle. So we are with you all the way to Washington, D.C., and we look so forward to your winning. And as I say, just stay the course. And if anyone wants to know more about Brittany's campaign for Congress, give us your website again, Brittany.
Brittanyforcongress.org, all spelled out.
All right. We are going to end the night with watching Brittany's campaign for Congress. And we say good night to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Brittany, for your time. And thank you for running for Congress. And thank you so much, because we can speak for ourselves. Good night.
Thank you.
My name is Brittany Ramos Debarros, and I'm a proud Afro-Latina Staten Islander, community organizer, and combat veteran. This island has been my home since I came back from war, only to find my fellow veterans and community members struggling and dying on the streets. I began to ask why we always have money for war, but not to take care of the people sent to fight them, or the people we're supposedly fighting for.
These wars are immoral. Profiting off of killing is immoral. It is time to stand up, and we won't be silent anymore.
Since then, I've watched a revolving door of leaders tell us what we can't have. Tell us that the poor and vulnerable are our enemies, while the rich skip out on their taxes and get richer off our backs. Enough.
I'm running for Congress because we're tired of being told to settle for crumbs and be grateful. We have the highest COVID case rate in the city, and instead of fighting for care and relief, Nicole Malliotakis is out here inciting violent coups and acting like our lives and democracy are worthless.
I believe in us. I believe we can have a country where no one dies because they can't afford healthcare, where we have thriving schools filled with happy kids and teachers that don't have to scrape to get by. My name is Brittany Ramos Debarros, and I'm running to represent New York 11 in Congress. I am unbought, unbossed, and unafraid. I know our power when we come together. We, the workers, the mothers, the nurses, the first responders, the forgotten, are the real backbone of this district. We are already powerful, and when we fight together, we win.